If you've ever played Tekken, chances are you might have had an interaction that looked like this. Maybe it never happened to you, maybe you've just seen a tweet of an interaction like that, with someone talking about how busted this game is. It's not surprising. I feel like anyone, maybe people who don't even play Tekken, can tell why this would spike frustration in players. Often it's paired up with that person saying, their move got mid-crushed. And then someone else comes in and says there's no such thing as a mid-crush. And then, they just end up sending death threats to each other, because that's just online discourse for you. This is an age-old misunderstanding that comes from two of Tekken's lesser understood mechanics, at least by the more casual player base. But they are mechanics that have been around since at least Tekken 5, but they've definitely been around for longer. It's almost like these games haven't had a tutorial in a long time, and I think the developers are just relying on players just figuring it out on their own, I guess. Anyway, the two mechanics in question are crushing and evasion. Before we dive into these two mechanics, we first need to understand that while these two systems seem like perhaps they're identical or even redundant, the way they overlap does allow for some unique character interactions and gives different matchups just a little bit more quirks and challenges. I will concede that on the surface, these two mechanics fundamentally serve the same purpose of avoiding attacks and retaliating, usually to steal the opponent's turn or at least to reset neutral. However, the way they achieve this goal is different for each system, and to explain this, how about we start with the more discussed and arguably the more misunderstood mechanic of the two. Crushing is a system that was formally named and introduced in quote-unquote Tekken 5. This mechanic allows characters to completely avoid either highs or lows with attacks of their own. The key here being that this system only covers highs and lows. Yeah, I remember that. Just follow along for now. These moves avoid highs and lows because during their animations there are frames where they are considered technically crouching or technically jumping. If you're an old Tekken head, these phrases might sound a little familiar, because technically crouching and technically jumping states have been around since at least Tag 1. Afterwards, in Tekken 5, Namco appropriately distributed these states between the members of the cast and then just renamed it to the Crush system. Moves like Kazuya's down 1+2, Asuka's down back 1, and Brian's orbital heal are all examples of moves with crushing properties, be it high or low. Once it's understood that these are the only two states which the crushing system covers, it's understood why it's frequently said that mid-crushing does not exist. Additionally, you see, there's another aspect to the system that I haven't mentioned yet, and it's that these states actually avoid attacks not by simply getting out of the way, as they completely remove the other move's hitbox for the entirety of the state's duration. This causes very fun things where you can see some whack-ass slow-mo where a jab or some other high will just phase through the opponent as they do a generic low that just kills you. Hold on, let's just pause here. This isn't an example of bad hitboxes or slow-mo messing with move properties, although that is 100% a real thing. This is actually just the crush system working exactly as intended, completely nullifying the opponent's hitbox, no matter how big it might be. Making the system work like this is vital to designing these moves. It might occasionally look wrong. In fact, more often than not, it does look wrong, especially when slowed down, but in normal motion, it's kinda okay. Listen, man, it's important for mechanics and shit. And saying anything that can sound vaguely positive about Tekken, especially Tekken 8, will just anger the Tekken mob. Kinda makes me question why I'd even make a video about the game's mechanics, but... Anyways, on to Evasion. Evasion will hopefully be a simpler mechanic to explain, as it's quite literally in the name. You evade stuff. It's self-explanatory. This means, unlike crushing, you're not invalidating the opponent's hitbox. In fact, there's multiple ways to evade attacks, and it's not limited to just pressing evasive buttons. If you've ever sidestepped or backdashed away from the range of a move, then that's an example of evasion right there. There are other examples of evasive movement, like Hwoarang's Flamingo Step, Steve's Weaves, and Xiaoyu's AOP Art of Phoenix. And of course, there are multiple moves that have built-in evasion. A common example of evasive moves are moves with built-in sidesteps, such as Jin's up forward 2 and Hwoarang's back 1. However, there is another method, and it doesn't even involve lateral movement. How about shrinking or collapsing your hurt box so much you basically avoid any incoming damage, or hell, you might even just throw your hurt box 7 feet into the air and completely avoid everything. These kinds of moves don't need to disable your attacks at all. They just move their hurt box so far away that you basically whiff. It's worth mentioning that while these moves do try to avoid everything, not disabling your hitboxes means that certain moves will be avoided, but others with more suitable hitboxes will clip them. Also worth noting is that a move can have both of these properties simultaneously. And oh, what's that in the middle of the Venn diagram? Oh, a jump scare. Yes, indeed, this means a move with a lot of evasion could also have crushing properties. Moves like these not only technically have crouching or jumping states, they also shift the character's hurt box massively. Examples of moves with these kinds of properties are some pretty common suspects like Lars's up forward 4, Leo's down back 3, and of course, Lily's Matterhorn Assumption. Moves like these allow characters to cover what is frankly a ridiculous amount of options in certain matchups, especially in common scenarios such as a heat dash on block. So, what did we learn here? Well, I'd like to think that the takeaway is that Tekken is a complicated game, and even when dumbed down with massively questionable game design known as Tekken 8 Season 2, there's still a lot of depth to these mechanics, and the lack of a proper in-game tutorial makes the series just harder to approach. Tekken hasn't had a good tutorial since Tag 2's Fight Lab, which, while fun, struggled to explain the depths of the series' mechanics. This usually causes the confusion that you see online and in the community. Though that's not actually the point. The point was that Tekken Reddit, Tekken Twitter, they're always wrong, and I fucking hate them. Yeah, that's about it. Bye. There's still a lot of depth to these mechanics. Bruh.